Welcome back to Medical Ethics. This is Alex Anderson again, and today we're going to discuss moral theories. Uh, just another reminder that these videos are supplemental, and you will still be responsible for everything that is in the reading, but hopefully this will help guide your reading. Alright, let's get started. What exactly is a moral theory? It's not just any idea that you could have about morals. It's something that explains um, not it's something that explains why actions are right or wrong, or why a person's character is good or bad. Unlike a scientific theory, which explains why one event causes another, um, these are theories about why murder, uh, theft, anything might be bad. Uh, and along those lines, it provides some test to help you figure out whether an action is good or bad. Um, and also, it is coherent logically. Moral theories are not just lists of rules. They need to have a logical coherence to them, and you need to be able to apply uh, to a new situation in some way or other, um, and, and figure out if under that moral theory whether that would be moral or not. All right. So, what types of moral theory are there? Well, here we will be talking about three types of moral theory. Although it's really two types. We'll get into that. Uh, Consequentialist moral theories are those that insist that the the consequences, the result of the action, how much good or bad is produced at the end of everything is all that matters. Uh, your choices in between, like the specific actions you did to get there, that type of stuff does not matter. Non-consequentialist theories uh, are those that do think that some of the stuff in there matters. Um, some of the stuff that isn't just what the result is. You know, what's left standing at the end. And Deontological theories are a special type of non-consequentialist theory. They are um, they don't think that the consequences matter at all. All that matters is the intrinsic nature of the action. Is that action moral or not? If it if it if you do something completely moral that results that has bad results, a deontologist will say you're perfectly fine, whereas a consequentialist is going to have some questions for you. Um, Speaking of consequentialism, the most famous consequentialist moral theory, developed by Jeremy Bentham and John Stuart Mill. However, uh, there are others. Uh, Moism in China. There are some Buddhist thinkers. There's some echoes of utilitarian thought in early Epicureanism. But anyway, we'll be worried about Jeremy Bentham and John Stuart Mill. It's the most famous consequentialist moral theory. And from our principles from last week, this theory emphasizes utility. Right actions are those that result in the most beneficial balance of good or bad consequences for everyone. For some utilitarian theories, that means the most amount of happiness at the end. For some, it means the most amount of pleasure. Others have sort of other metrics for it, but the point is, what matters is uh, the end result. You take, you know, you take the total amount of pleasure, you subtract the total amount of pain, and if it's significantly positive, it's a good action. If it's significantly negative, it's a bad action. So let's apply utilitarianism. You may have seen trolley problem memes on the internet. They are actually something that applies to uh, philosophy and moral theory. Um, and they're good as an illustration. First, if you haven't seen these, a sort of explanation would be um, imagine that you are standing right next to two tracks that meet up to each other. And there's a trolley going down one of the tracks. Now, it's heading straight for five people who are tied to the tracks. And if you just let the trolley go, um, the most likely outcome is all five of those people will die. However, um, if uh, you who have this lever um, could possibly change the track that the trolley is on. However, there's also someone tied to that track, um, but it's just one person. Um, for utilitarianism, uh, they say you should pull the lever. And that's because one death is better than five. The ultimate result is what matters. So, pulling the lever is the right action. Um, as we'll see, there are other answers to this, and uh, and as you'll also see, utilitarianism doesn't care what you're doing. It only cares that in the end, there's more good by how it calculates good than there was before, or that there wasn't any alternative. So it's possible that the world is worse off. Um, it seems likely that if this one guy lived, probably things would be better. There'd be at least one more life. Um, However, since there were two possible outcomes, this one seems better because uh, only one person is dead instead of five. So utilitarianism often treats people as sort of interchangeable, and goods is interchangeable. So your happiness is worth the same as my happiness. Your pleasure is worth the same as my pleasure. Um, there's some issues with that, but we won't get into those yet. All right, Kantianism. This is a moral theory that was developed by Immanuel Kant, which is why it's named Kantianism. It is an entirely deontological theory. Kant does not care how many people are left standing at the end, how much good or happiness or pleasure is at the end. He only cares about whether the action is good or not. Kantianism emphasizes autonomy out of our principles. And as some notes, he argues that there's an absolute moral prohibition against killing the innocent ever, even if you have a really good reason, lying, even if you have a really good reason, committing suicide, and failing to help others when feasible. How Kantianism works. You can read the whole thing on the screen. It's also in the reading that I gave you. But what matters here is that that Kantianism is a purely logical system. Um, Kant uh, Kant says, consider an action, consider lying in order to borrow money, and consider that that you made it a rule that everyone should lie to borrow money. Um, he argues that promises wouldn't make any sense if that were the case. It's not that there would be chaos. It's not that, um, you know, I mean, no one would lend money out if everyone was lying about it. Um, it's not the consequences of it. It's that uh, Kant thinks there's a contradiction and there's uh, that promises wouldn't make any sense if you did that, so it would be immoral to do. So Kantianism in action. Kant says you cannot morally pull the lever. That's because just analyzing your action, Kant will say, you're sacrificing one life in order to save the other five. Kant doesn't think sacrificing a life uh, is ever something you can morally do to save people. Um, Kant, you can think of Kant as very principled in this way. He cares about what you're doing. He doesn't care about the results, um, because Kant thinks good or bad is mostly determined by your will and what you will to do. It's not something out in the world that you go and count. Now, something that's sort of in between this, as we'll see next, is what we'll call natural law. Now, there's a lot of different theorists of natural law. There was even a version of natural law that was the basis of jurisprudence for a while in the United States, but especially in philosophy and especially in sort of moral theory, it's associated with Thomas Aquinas and his followers. Natural law is a non-consequentialist theory. It's not deontological. It doesn't just care about your actions, but and it also doesn't just care about the results. It cares about both, especially foreseeable results. If there are very bad foreseeable results for your action, natural law is going to have um, a big deal with that. So one of the things about natural law, at least Aquinas' version of it, is an idea that all nature is teleological. That means it is directed towards particular goals or ends. This is sort of like how your heart is designed to pump blood, how like the beaks of finches are sort of designed to eat certain foods, um, and uh, and Aquinas and others think that humans have a purpose, and that purpose is related to our rationality, which is the most distinguishing characteristic of of humanity, according to most natural law theorists. Now, let's look at natural law in action. Um, so, natural law will often come, or usually come to the exact same conclusion as Kantianism. You can't morally pour the lever. But they sort of go by a different way. Um, Pulling the lever directly kills someone. The action is prohibited. In natural law, you can't directly kill someone for some other benefit. There are less drastic actions that you can do in order to, have a beneficial end. It just this is a sort of a stopgap. You can't go further than this. All right, so let's look at them all together. Or let me try to explain the difference between natural law and Kantianism, considering that they have the same answer to the trolley problem. Um, so, similarly, both are non consequentialist theories, which means that some actions are just wrong by their nature, regardless if they have good results. So, that's the same for both of them. However, for like not like super bad actions, natural law will allow consequences to be a factor in considering whether something was a good action or not. Uh, Whereas deontology will not. As an example, um, natural law will often say that if you feel good about doing a good thing, that's like extra good. Like you should feel good about doing good things and feel bad about doing bad things. Kant thinks that this is a bit selfish, that we should do things out of duty and like leave our emotions out of it. Um, Natural law theorists are a little more cheery about this. Natural law is far less concerned about autonomy than Kant. Kant is all about um, you rationally self-directing yourself. He wants you to come up with uh, the moral rules yourself. Um, he assumes he thinks everyone will come up with the same moral rules, but he wants you to work it all out yourself, and then hold yourself accountable for that. So, um, so people's choices and their will is very important for Kant. Um, so Kant believes that morality is derived purely by reason. It's all in your head. It's all something that you work out by yourself. Natural law, on the other hand, believes that we can see moral truths in the world. That is, uh, you can sort of observe the world. You can find out things about humans that affect what's good or bad for us to do. All right. In summary, looking at all of them, uh, utilitarianism is consequentialist and emphasizes utility. Whatever action increases happiness or pleasures is the best action. Kantianism is deontological. Uh, all that matters is your action. Kant cares a heck of a lot about your autonomy. He wants you to be self-governing. Moral actions follow a set of rules that can be discovered purely by reason. Um, Not out in the world, but worked out in your own head. Natural law is non consequentialist. It cares about the results, but not nearly as much as utilitarianism. It cares about what you choose to do, but not nearly as much as Kantianism. It emphasizes beneficence. You're doing good and avoiding evil and avoiding harm is very important to them. Moral actions are set by our nature and our perfectibility as human beings. Natural law cares very much about um, sort of the best possible version of humanity, and tries to map out what we should be doing, sort of in terms of that. So hopefully that helps out with the reading. I will see you guys uh, in the near future. Thank you.